Hi folks, Brian Hallaq from Norpoint Training Center, back again with a conversation about guns. And last go around was with my anti-gun friends, so this time it's with my pro-gun friends. So today what I want to talk about is a little bit of the corollary of what I talked about in the last episode with my anti-gun friends. And with my anti-gun friends, I chided them a bit about not being educated about guns when they sit there and have a conversation with us. Very common for that to happen. They just don't know what they're talking about. They don't even really know the parts of the gun, and they want to speak to us with some authority about that, and it really comes off pretty badly. So I encourage my anti-gun friends to take a class, and as strange as that might sound, I think that they would benefit from that. Now, for my pro-gun friends, I encourage the same thing. And I think this is where it plays into the debate. Let's think for a second. How often have you talked to somebody that's uninitiated to gun culture and they say something like, well, do you have a license for that? And you think to yourself, well, I probably do. A lot of you have license to for a concealed pistol. And so, you say yes. Okay. You have to stop for a moment and understand why they're asking you that question. For the most part, they don't understand what the meaning of the license is. I'm filming this here in Washington State, and so your jurisdiction might be slightly different, but essentially, here in Washington, you do not need a license to possess or own a firearm. If you want to carry it out in public, concealed on your person, that's when you obtain the license. And that's the way it is in most jurisdictions. But for people who are uninitiated to guns, in their mind, you need a license to carry the gun. Why is that? Well, what they're really thinking is they're expecting or they're hoping that somebody in authority sat down somewhere and said, oh, well, this person, yeah, okay, he passes the test. He's somebody that's responsible. We're going to go ahead and let him own a gun. That's what they're asking you. In fact, to break it down even further, to test that theory, ask your friends about, especially your anti-gun friends, why they think it's okay for police officers to carry firearms. You're going to find out from the perspective of anti-gunners, most of them feel the only justification for a police officer to carry a firearm is the fact that they have some sort of mandate by some sort of government agency, and they have training. Those are the two things that in an anti-gunner's mind mean that it's okay to carry a gun. Other than that, in their minds, they're probably okay with police officers not even possessing firearms. So let's take that and apply it to you. In their minds, they're looking at you and asking you whether you have the license to know whether or not you are responsible enough to have a firearm, even though the license itself has nothing to do with that. And so understand that if they're coming at it with that perspective, you should also take it to its next level, which is in their mind, they're expecting or hoping that you have some level of training with respect to your firearm. And this is where I get the most blowback from gun owners, surprisingly enough. It is shocking how many experienced gun handlers will tell me they don't need training. And the numbers of excuses for why they don't need training, frankly, can boggle the mind. They will tell me everything from they've had specialized training in the military to they're members of the NRA. Their granddaddy taught them how to shoot. They've been doing this since they were 2 years old, etc., 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 etc. And hence, I don't need to learn. For those people, I'm here to tell you, yes, you do. You do on a number of levels. You do because when you talk to the anti-gunner, they want to know that you know what you're talking about when it comes to firearms. And frankly, your training needs to be relevant to the subject that you're talking about. And so, but second of all, they're looking to you, both my gun-neutral friends and my anti-gun friends, they're looking to you if they know you, love you, and respect you. They're looking to you to sort of set that example for them. God forbid you happen to be the person that has an accident with a firearm. For the anti-gunner, you just confirmed everything that they believed about gun people. For the gun-neutral person, you just convinced them to become an anti-gunner, because if you are capable of a firearm as an accident, and they know and love and trust you, than anybody is. And so really probably nobody should have a firearm. So as far as the gun debate's concerned, it's critical that you have training. Now let me explain to you why some of that training that you had in the past may not be ideal. I'm not trying to denigrate whatever training you got in the military, but let's sit down for a second and let's be honest. For my military veterans, I thank you for your service, and I absolutely respect everything you did in terms of your commitment to our country and our freedoms. But let me get down to brass tacks. Was your MOS one that required you to carry a handgun in a fashion that's similar to the way civilian armed citizens carry firearms? Probably not. I mean, the military is a large organization, and very few people are carrying handguns as part of their official mandate. Even if they're carrying a handgun, very few of them receive the kind of training that makes handgun possession for defensive purposes relevant to the civilian world. Some of you learn from friends who you believe are firearms experts, and so you'll go out with your buddy whose brother-in-law is a cop. So the two of you guys, or the three of you guys, go out to the range. You learn from him. You figured he's a police officer. He knows what he's doing. He's translated those skills onto you. Life is great. Listen, police officers have a very different mandate for how and why they carry their guns and how and why they use them than you do. And so the fact that you might have learned some basic marksmanship skills doesn't make you safe, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you possess the good judgment necessary to know when it's time to pull the trigger. So for people who are real experienced, they're the ones I worry about. I've been on a myriad of ranges all over this country, and sadly I've seen folks discharge firearms when they didn't intend to do it. And I'll be honest with you, they've all been folks that had a number of years of firearms experience under their belt. And actually, it's a little bit sad that they tend to be sometimes in the advanced level classes that this takes place. But why is that? Let's break it down for a moment. These accidental discharges oftentimes take place with people that are pushing themselves beyond their natural skill level. Oftentimes they're not recognizing natural weaknesses in their own abilities. Oftentimes they're tired, they're distracted, their mind is thinking about things other than where they are. And so what happens is discharges take place, and that's in advanced level courses. Accidental discharges on garden variety ranges, unfortunately, they happen quite a bit. Now, when I say accidental discharges, I mean, for the anti-gunners, they're all freaking out. Don't go to range, people get killed. No. Look, the way it usually breaks down is a guy will take a gun out and, for whatever reason, hasn't considered the possibility that it's still loaded and launches one off into the ground. Didn't know that was going to take place. Thankfully, we are lucky in that most of these things result in really pretty minimal property damage. But there were still accidental discharges. They weren't intended, and they belie what the ultimate problem is that this person's level of safety is not where it ought to be. So we have to stop and think to ourselves, how do we prevent ourselves from being that person? It's the advanced person I'm worried about. And so I'm here to tell you, if you're an advanced practitioner of guns, if you think you know what you're doing with guns, you're precisely the person that needs to get training under your belt. And frankly, if you really understand this subject, what you'll really find out at some level is you never stop learning. I have trained with really some of the guys that are some of the best in the business. And what I've found is no matter how high level they are, they never stop learning. They're always looking for that new piece of information. What you learn when you get really good at this stuff is how much you don't know. Even master level instructors who teach other instructors are themselves constantly trying to find avenues to learn more about their craft. So, I'm here to tell you that there's nothing embarrassing about taking education. There's nothing embarrassing about taking a training course. And in fact, I highly encourage you to do it. If you think you're great with a gun, go take a basic safety course. I don't care if you think it's a snoozer, go do it. If you do it, challenge yourself. First, take the course and figure out, okay, yep, I got it, I understand. Usually when I take courses, I'll often repeat a course a couple of 2-3 times, And what I'm looking for each time is something slightly different. I'll learn something new each time. Think about this. In adult education, we know that the educational professionals tell us that people only absorb about 25% of the material that's given to them. So just theoretically, you'd almost need to take a class 4 times to get all the information down pat. When I take a basic level class, sometimes I'll take it with a gun that maybe I'm not familiar with. Maybe I'll switch to, say, a revolver, for example, just to give myself that extra bit of challenge. Maybe I'll take my kit and turn it and start using it left-handed. Again, it's a different experience. It allows me to learn more about myself, about my own safety, about my own competency. So I highly encourage advanced people to do this stuff. And you know, if you're shying away from training, I'm here to tell you that this affects your ability to talk intelligently with people in the gun debate. Watch some of my videos. I'm not pulling these things out of thin air. Most of these are not original ideas. These things that I'm saying, these are things that were honed from years and years of education. It behooves you to get that, because here's the thing: in the mind of the anti-gunner, you lack the legitimacy to tell them anything unless you have both that state mandate and that training. Now, I understand that the state mandate, being, I guess, a concealed carry permit, isn't really doesn't really confer anything special, but to the anti-gunner it does, and so you might as well go do it. Why not? Why not go get, if your jurisdiction allows you to have a concealed carry permit, even if you don't plan on actively being an armed citizen, just have it. Go do it. It does, at least in terms of the debate, for the people that are uninitiated. If they ask you that strange question, are you licensed, you can say yes, and at least you can get to that next level, and they don't put up the brick wall and prevent anything else you say from bouncing off of it. But then the next level is you got to go get training, and it's not good enough to say, well, you know, hey, I took a familiarizations course in the Army, or you know, hey, my brother-in-law took me out shooting, or I'm a life member of the NRA. You know, tell them, hey, listen, you know, I've taken a safety class. I took it last year as a refresher. I've taken, you know, this many hours of training. A good one to do is find out how many hours your local police department's police academy trains their recruits in firearms before they turn them loose on the street. And you'll find the number to be surprisingly pretty low in terms of the number of hours of firearms training that most jurisdictions impart to their recruits before they send them loose on the street. Try to make that a goal for yourself, to get at least that many hours of training in your training resume. I think that's a fantastic threshold to meet, because then you can sit down, and when you're having this discussion with your anti-gun friends, you can say, listen, you know, such and such PD, before they acquire a new recruit out of the academy, that academy recruit has gotten this many hours of training. Well, I've exceeded that by this much. And so when I'm talking to you, I know what I'm saying. And so now you talk with an air of legitimacy that you might not have had before. Certainly it makes you a safer person. And we've talked about this before. If you are prone to a potential accident with a firearm, I'm here to tell you, immediately, without a doubt, you're the person that makes life tremendously difficult for the rest of us. And so it's critical for you to get that training, especially safety. Safety is one of those areas that the more years I spend learning about this stuff, the more I find that there's more aspects to it that I hadn't picked up on before. So if you think you're safe, if you've got that level of arrogance, stop, take a breath. I encourage you to do some soul searching. Go sign up. You know, take a buddy of yours who doesn't know much about guns, take them with you to a local safety class, and just hang out and listen to what the instructor says. You might find that you learned something. I'd be really surprised if you didn't learn something. And so, so for my pro-gun friends, go get educated, get training. It's critical. It's important. It will make a difference to your ability to frame the debate in an honest and careful way. So for this episode of A Conversation About Guns, this is Brian Hallaq. Thanks for listening.